They called it a quaint village, Maple Hollow, nestled near the edge of the northern woods, where tourists came to escape the noise of cities, snapping pictures of rustic cabins, sipping coffee in local cafes, and marveling at the snow-kissed landscape that blanketed the earth each winter. But for all its quiet beauty, Maple Hollow had one figure that many visitors overlooked. An old, limping dog with a graying muzzle and one torn ear, who wandered the streets with slow dignity, his tail lowered but never tucked, his amber eyes carrying the weight of stories no one cared to ask about. Most locals knew him as Shadow, though no one could say where the name had started, only that he had been around for years, never bothering a soul, never begging, never barking, just present, like a statue of time moving forward. The villagers respected him. The children had once played near him. The baker left scraps near the alley behind the shop, and the librarian, Miss Elsie, swore he sometimes sat outside the war memorial for hours, staring at a name etched in stone. But one summer afternoon, a group of tourists, young, loud, wrapped in the kind of arrogance that often follows ignorance, saw the old dog lying beneath the park bench and mistook him for a nuisance. They didn't see the faint glint of intelligence in his eyes. They didn't notice the stiffness of his legs from old injury. They saw a mutt, dirty, homeless. They laughed as they approached, one picking up a stone, then another. One shouted, "Shoo, you filthy stray," and lobbed a rock that struck the dog in the shoulder. Shadow flinched but didn't run. He simply stood, slow and deliberate, turning to face them with a silence that made even the birds pause. But another stone came, then another. He yelped, once, and limped away, disappearing behind the statue of a soldier, saluting in the center of the park. The laughter didn't last long, because someone had seen. From the porch across the street, a man rose from his wooden rocking chair, a tall, broad-shouldered figure, though age had carved deep lines into his face. His name was General William Hargrave, retired after 35 years in the army, most of them spent in war zones the tourists couldn't pronounce. His face was like granite, his stare steel, and the moment he stepped into the street, silence fell like a curtain. He didn't shout, didn't raise his voice. He simply walked toward the group, his military boots hitting the pavement like a metronome of judgment. The tourists chuckled nervously at first, until one of them recognized the medals pinned on his porch wall behind the window and the framed photo of the general receiving the Silver Star. One of them whispered, "That's Hargrave. That's the Hargrave." The old man stopped inches away from the boy, still holding a rock, and stared down at him. "That dog," he said, voice low and steady, "is not a stray. He is a soldier. He saved more lives than you'll ever understand, and today you threw stones at your better." Confused silence. Then Hargrave stepped past them and whistled once, sharp, clean. From behind the statue, Shadow limped back into view, blood matting the fur at his shoulder, eyes locked not on the crowd, but on the man who once led him through fire. Hargrave knelt slowly, ignoring the pain in his own knees, and opened his arms. The old dog broke into a limping run and collapsed into his chest. You could have heard a leaf fall. What the tourists didn't know, what no one outside a tightly folded file in a military archive knew, was that Shadow had once been a military K-9 named Valor, trained for search and rescue, deployed alongside Hargrave in Afghanistan and later Syria. He had dragged wounded soldiers from burning vehicles, sniffed out explosives, and once stood guard beside Hargrave's tent for 36 straight hours during an enemy siege. On his last mission, a roadside bomb had gone off too close, killing 2, injuring 4, and sending shrapnel into Valor's hind leg. Hargrave could have retired him to a shelter, but he didn't. He brought him home, nursed him, loved him, But when Hargrave's wife passed away 2 years later, the old man had crumbled inside. He stopped leaving the house, stopped smiling. Valor, sensitive as ever, began wandering, only during the day, always returning by dusk. The villagers didn't stop him. They understood grief, but the tourists didn't. That night, Hargrave took to Facebook, not for vanity, but for truth. He posted a photo, him in uniform, young and proud, standing beside a younger Valor, both flanked by mountains and firelight. The caption read, "Before you judge a dog by his fur, remember, some scars are earned in silence." The post went viral. Within 48 hours, local and national news stations descended upon Maple Hollow. People flooded in not for the scenery, but to see the old hero and his dog. Donations arrived at the vet clinic where Valor was treated. A sculptor offered to build a bronze statue of Valor beside the soldiers' memorial in the park. Children wrote letters. Soldiers shared their own stories. And the same group of tourists, shamed and shaken, returned quietly weeks later to help clean up the park and donate supplies to the local shelter in Valor's name. Hargrave, who had long held back the tears of war, finally wept openly during the unveiling of the statue. Not just because of the honor, but because the world had remembered what it often forgets, that loyalty, courage, and love don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they walk on 4 legs, limping, silent, unbreakable. And from that day forward, whenever tourists came to Maple Hollow, they were told of the old dog beneath the bench, the one who wasn't just a dog at all. He was a soldier, a brother, a hero. And every morning, as long as he lived, Valor sat by the statue, cast in his likeness, watching the sunrise with General Hargrave by his side. 2 old warriors, bound not by war, but by the unshakable peace that comes from being truly, finally, understood. But peace, like all things, is fleeting, and time, relentless as it is, does not wait. Not even for heroes. In the quiet months that followed the statue unveiling, Valor began to slow further. His walks grew shorter, his eyes a little cloudier, and the once sharp alertness in his ears now dulled with age. General Hargrave, too, felt the ache of years in his bones, and the hollow ache that only deep companionship can fill. They moved together, more slowly now, through the village, sharing silent mornings by the lake, stopping at the war memorial bench, and always ending the day watching the sun slip behind the trees in the west. One evening, the general noticed Valor hadn't risen from his spot beside the fire. He lay curled, his breathing heavy, eyes fluttering. Hargrave rushed to his side, cradling the dog's head in his lap, whispering to him softly, "It's all right, son. You've done enough. You can rest now." Tears broke through the old soldier's stone face, and he stayed like that for hours, holding the only living soul who had walked with him through war and into peace. Valor passed that night, silently, nobly, his last breath taken in the arms of the only man he had ever truly trusted. The town mourned with the general. Flags flew at half-mast. Children left drawings and letters at the base of the statue. Soldiers from 3 different branches attended the small ceremony Hargrave arranged in the town square. No eulogy was given. Instead, Hargrave stood before the people and saluted, saying only one word, voice cracking with emotion, "Brother." He had Valor buried beneath the statue, not as a dog, but as a veteran. A plaque was placed above the grave that read, "Sergeant Valor, faithful until the final watch." The loss changed Hargrave. For days he didn't speak. He returned to his porch chair and sat staring at the road, hoping for the sound of pause that would never come. But something unexpected began to happen in the village. Every few weeks, a traveler or veteran, someone who had read about Valor or served with Hargrave would come visit. They'd bring flowers or dog tags or photos of their own military dogs, and they'd sit with the general for a few hours in silence, offering their presence as tribute. Then one rainy morning, a boy came running to Hargrave's porch, soaked to the bone, shouting, "Sir, there's a pup in the woods. She's stuck in the fence and won't let anyone near her." Without hesitation, Hargrave grabbed his coat and followed. There, tangled in thorns near the edge of the woods, was a small German shepherd puppy, muddy, terrified, snarling at anyone who approached. But when Hargrave knelt down, something remarkable happened. She stopped growling. She tilted her head. And then, slowly, she crawled toward him, limping, just like Valor had once limped, and collapsed at his feet. Exhausted but trusting, Hargrave named her Honor. At first, he thought she would never replace what he had lost. And she didn't. But she filled a different space, a continuation, not a substitution. She was bold, curious, reckless with youth, and fiercely protective of the man who had saved her. With her arrival, the house grew warm again. Laughter returned to the walls. And once more, the people of Maple Hollow began to see an old soldier smile. Honor was trained gently, patiently. Hargrave taught her, not with the discipline of a drill sergeant, but with the grace of someone who understood loss, pain, and healing. She learned to sit beside the statue each morning, to accompany Hargrave to town, to lay beside his chair as he read letters from former comrades, many of whom now wrote to her, calling her Sergeant Valor's successor. But what truly stunned the town happened one winter evening. The general had collapsed near the lake during a walk, his heart, weakened by age, giving out. Honor, barely a year old, stayed with him, howling and pawing at his chest. She ran into town, barking, pulling at coats, leading a group of villagers back to where he lay. Emergency responders said if she had arrived 5 minutes later, he would have died. When Hargrave recovered, he called her his guardian angel. From that point forward, Hargrave never walked alone. Honor was there, growing stronger, wiser, more watchful. And as the years passed, visitors to Maple Hollow no longer just asked about the statue. They came for the story, for the general and his dogs, for what it meant to love something so deeply that even death could not sever the bond. Eventually, when the time came, Hargrave too passed, peacefully in his sleep, with Honor curled at his side. The village held its largest gathering yet. They buried him beside Valor. 2 graves now beneath the statue, 2 warriors, 1 legacy. Honor, still young, was taken in by Miss Elsie the librarian, but she never stopped visiting the statue. Every day she lay beside the memorial. Every evening, she howled once toward the horizon, as if calling out to the spirits of those she'd loved and lost. And in that small, quiet village, the legend lived on, not just of a dog or a soldier, but of the sacred bond between human and animal, of courage passed from paw to palm, of love that transcended even death. Because some stories aren't just remembered, they are felt in every heartbeat of those who carry them forward.